Let's move on to the main bearing shell maintenance procedure. Normally, you can disassemble and inspect the main bearing without completely removing the main bearing cap. Lower the main bearing cap, and only the main bearing can be dismantled. Remove the engine frame side covers of the cylinders before and after the main bearing to be disassembled. Then, position the crank pin on the side on which disassembly and inspection will be performed, at approximately 95 degrees before top dead center. Remove the side bolt protecting cap. Use the hydraulic jack to remove the side bolt nut. The side bolt protecting cap is threaded. Turn the cap to loosen it before removing it. Attach the jack stand and the hydraulic jack assembly to each of the side bolts and connect the assembly and the hydraulic pump with the high pressure hoses. Operate the hydraulic pump lever to increase the oil pressure to the specified value and loosen the nut with the jack handle. Confirm the oil pressure at which the nut starts turning and check that the nut has been securely tightened. Remove the hydraulic jack assemblies and jack stands. Remove the nuts. Remove the main bearing cap tightening nuts C using the hydraulic jack. Attach the jack stand and the hydraulic jack assembly to each main bearing cap bolt and connect the assembly to the hydraulic pump with the high pressure hoses. Operate the hydraulic pump lever to increase the oil pressure to the specified value and loosen the main bearing cap tightening nut using the jack handle. Confirm the oil pressure at which the main bearing cap tightening nut starts turning and check that the nut has been securely tightened. Remove the high pressure hose from the hydraulic jack assembly and remove the hydraulic jack assembly and jack stand. Lower the main bearing cap in accordance with the following procedure. Attach the main bearing cap C-tools to the main bearing cap bolt. Screw the tool 3 to which the C4 nut has been fitted onto each main bearing cap bolt until the tool tip gets into contact. Fit the C2 tool and the C1 tool to which the nuts have been fitted onto the C3 tools from the side and secure the tool with the nuts. Fit the C2 tool to the main bearing cap and secure the C2 tool with the nut. Loosen the main bearing cap tightening nut approximately 15 millimeters from the nut contact surface of the main bearing cap. Loosen and remove the side bolts. Turn the nut to lower it until it touches the tool. Turn the two main bearing cap tightening nuts to remove them from the main bearing cap bolts. Put the nuts on the C1 tool. Raise the C7 nut approximately 15 millimeters and turn the C6 nut to lower the main bearing cap. Repeat the operation to lower the main bearing cap until the distance between the C5 nut and the C7 nut is approximately 10 millimeters. Remove the lower bearing from the main bearing cap. Remove the upper bearing in accordance with the following procedure. Insert the main bearing pin into the lubricating hole in the crankshaft. Press the main bearing pin against the end face of the upper bearing without a claw. Then turn the crankshaft counterclockwise when viewed from the engine front side and remove the upper bearing. When removing the upper bearing, receive it in your palm to avoid damaging it. Turn the crankshaft and remove the main bearing pin from the lubricating hole in the crankshaft. Check that the rear surfaces and mating surfaces of the main bearing are free from fretting. Check that the inner surfaces are free from seizure marks, peeling, cavitation, and foreign matter. Check the bearing surfaces of the tightening nuts and the cap. If the surfaces are rough, repair them. Check that the main bearing cap mating surfaces and the contact surfaces of the fitting areas are free from defects such as fretting. Check visually and by touching with bare hands that the crankshaft journal is free from foreign matter and flaws. After cleaning the inner and rear surfaces of the main bearing metal with wash oil, carefully wipe the oil off the surfaces. Carefully wipe off the oil that is accumulated in the bearing part of the engine frame. Mount the upper bearing metal in the engine frame in accordance with the following procedure. Check the positions of the upper bearing metal claw and the notch in the engine frame and push in the upper bearing by hand from the side not provided with the claw until it stops. Insert the main bearing pin into the lubricating hole in the crankshaft in the same manner as when disassembling. Turn the crankshaft clockwise when viewed from the engine front side and push the upper bearing until its end face aligns with the engine frame mating surface's main bearing cap. Turn the crankshaft counterclockwise when viewed from the engine front side and remove the main bearing pin. Confirm again that the upper bearing metal is set in position. Mount the lower bearing metal in the main bearing cap in accordance with the following procedure. Recheck by touching with bare hands that the crankshaft journal and the main bearing cap inner surface are free from foreign matter and flaws. Check the positions of the lower bearing metal, main bearing cap end face and claw, and fit the lower bearing to the main bearing cap. Make sure that the main bearing metal is fitted securely. Apply a sufficient amount of lubricating oil to the lower bearing metal's inner surface with your bare hands. remount the main bearing cap in accordance with the reverse procedure for removal. Turn the nut on the main bearing cap tool and raise the main bearing cap while fitting the side faces of the main bearing cap to the side faces of the engine frame. Screw the tightening nut on each main bearing cap bolt until the nut gets into contact with the surface. Screw in the tightening nuts using the jack handle D3 until the main bearing cap touches the engine frame mating surface. Make sure that the side faces of the main bearing cap are fitted to the side faces of the engine frame. Remove the main bearing cap tools. Screw the side bolts into the threaded holes in the main bearing cap by hand. After screwing them until their tips get into contact with the hole bottoms, rotate them back a half turn. Screw in the side bolt nuts by hand until they contact the surface. Tighten the main bearing cap tightening nuts. In the same manner as when disassembling, attach the main bearing jack stand and the hydraulic jack assembly to each nut and tighten them to the specified oil pressure. Tighten the two nuts simultaneously. After tightening them to the specified pressure, return the oil pressure to 0 once, and then increase it again to the specified value to check the tightening state. Remove the high-pressure hoses, jacks, and jack stands. Tighten the side bolts. In the same manner as when disassembling, attach the side bolt jack stand and the hydraulic jack assembly to each bolt and tighten it to the specified oil pressure. Tighten the two side bolts of the same main bearing simultaneously. After tightening them to the specified pressure, return the oil pressure to 0 once and increase it again to the specified value to check the tightening state. Remove the high-pressure hoses, jacks, and jack stands. Attach the side bolt protecting rubber cap. When you complete reassembling the main bearing, measure the deflection. After the operation, clean and check the inside of the crankcase. Check to see if it turns easily. Check if the priming pump is working properly. When the maintenance process is completed, carry out an air run. Close the indicator valve and start a no-load operation. After starting the engine, check for oil and water leaks from each area. Go over various parts of the engine by hand to check for any abnormalities. After checking the engine, stop the engine. After stopping the engine, remove the side cover and check the temperature of the bearing. At the same time, check for any other abnormalities by hand. Fit the side cover. You've just watched the periodical maintenance processes for the DE18. For further information, please consult the manual. Here are some points to remember. Wear safety clothing. Use and follow signals. Be neat and tidy. Store measurement data. Use genuine parts. Look for tally marks. Observe prescribed tightening torques. Observe prescribed hydraulic jack pressures. Observe proper maintenance intervals. As seen in this video and noted in the instruction manual, proper maintenance is necessary to ensure your engine's long life and efficient service.